Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast, a collection of conversations with cool people who do cool things. Brought to you by Papercraft Miracles. Each week, we'll bring you inspiring stories of persistence, passion, and purpose. With your host, Jonna Willoughby-Lore.
Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast. I am your host, Jonna Willoughby-Lore, and this week I have Kirsten Shepard-Ahmed, who is an amazing fempreneur who is kicking ass and taking names down in Austin, Texas. She has a company called PainStopper, and they manufacture amazing CBD cannabis products. But she has this really interesting model for her business where she integrates this holistic care into the way that she takes care of her patients. So I'm going to let her tell you more about herself and her story, but this is going to be a cool show. I'm super excited. So thank you for being here. And you want to tell everyone a little bit more about you and your story and how you got here?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This is great. I love your podcast and Reach for the Stars. You always have something interesting. So it's great to be able to participate in your creativity. I have been a chiropractor and massage therapist for over 20 years with the massage therapy, the chiropractic over 10. And one of the things that I noticed early on is how our sick care system is failing our citizens. And the biggest evidence of that is this opioid crisis, that even though we're, still dealing with, the pandemic of COVID, the opioid crisis is still steadily climbing as far as, deaths that are, becoming from that. And it's tragic. It's a leading cause of death, behind the pandemic now in Americans over 50 years of age. And that's totally unacceptable. And the fact that this was created by pharmaceutical greed, I've always been passionate about finding alternatives, which I feel like the term should be more complementary medicine instead of alternative medicine, because we should be integrating care. So early on, I had this vision of, having an integrated practice that incorporated medical, chiropractic, massage, physical therapy, acupuncture, and any other dynamics that are going to help people with real solutions to their pain. We've kind of conditioned ourselves to, drugs as being a solution. I mean, how many times do we see these wonderful commercials on TV for a pill that you take because you've had this back pain? And if you would have taken this other pill instead of this pill, 8 hours later, your back pain wouldn't be back. And what we're doing is, we've gotten to a point, and we are a society where we want a quick fix. And I understand that, but we have to understand that none of this stuff has happened quickly. And if, as providers, our number one priority is to first do no harm, what we really need to do is utilize non-toxic natural systems first before we, even look at interventive, drug therapy, especially if somebody has what's called a neuromuscular skeletal disorder, which means the nerve, the muscle, or the bone. And, if we look at how many people go to the emergency room just for back pain, and what's the solution for that? It's going to be either a muscle relaxer or a pain reliever. So that's kind of how I got started in, the physical medicine realm of things and integrating care. And, with personal stories, being in a car accident, I didn't think I'd be a chiropractor initially. I wanted to be an attorney at first, and then it switched from that to a cardiologist until as a college student, I was in a car accident myself. So that changed my life because the drugs, the muscle relaxers and pain relievers did not help me. I have a low tolerance, so they would make me sleep through class. And then if I didn't take them, I was in too much pain to go, across those 40 acres to get to class. Mm-hmm. And the chiropractor changed my life and enlightened me with a massage therapist who was on staff. And that drove me to the path that I'm in now, where I really want to help people with solutions versus just patching things up. This is a whole another story if that I have, and kind of like you and some of your experiences, there's a multi-layer, of what brings us to where we are today. And similarly to your story, which I know all your viewers know, my dad was the reason how I got into the cannabis business. He had mesothelioma, which is the asbestos cancer, and the nausea, the vomiting, the lack of appetite, and the pain, that the chemo caused. I saw him, steadily declining. And I didn't know at that point much about medical cannabis and any of the products, but of course, as most know, about compassionate use and how the research shows that it was helping cancer patients. So I reached out to my friends in Colorado and LA. I had them send me, some things. I asked my dad, are you open to trying it? And he was like, I'll try anything at this point. And the more, that I researched, that's when I started learning about the powerful aspects of CBD. And that led me to create my own formulations, because he didn't like the THC CBD combos because it made him high. And I remember him making, the statement. He was like, back when I was younger, this would have been cool to feel like this. He's like, I'm too old. He's like, I don't want to feel that. And so it was really refreshing to see that, the CBD alone was beneficial for him. We started off with the oils, and he didn't like the taste of the oils. Now there's so many different varieties of oils you can get flavored. Maybe he'd, have a different approach to it if he were still alive. But I started rubbing products. I didn't even order any type of topicals. I just started, rubbing the oil with different types of lotions and bases. And, we finally had something, and he said, you know what, you should consider, making this so that you can help other people. And that's where, we kind of got led to today. And I founded PainStoppers back in 2018 was when I officially launched the product, but I spent a few years actually beta testing on, patients, friends, anyone who would try it. I would give them, different vials of something, periodically. And so now we have a global patent that's pending on our extreme formulation. I have a few products in the line, and we're getting ready to launch some additional products. But more importantly, I feel driven to not simply sell the products, but to educate other individuals and healthcare providers about what research is out, because there's a lot of misinformation and confusion in the marketplace. And I feel that cannabis, which we know has been around for centuries, can help so many people if providers are comfortable and they know how to recommend and what to recommend to their patients, and individuals know, what products to choose, because there's so many on the market now that don't have what they say they have in them. How do you choose a viable product? And I just don't believe what you're going to get from your local convenience store. And even, unfortunately, some of the CBD standalone stores don't have products that are really viable. And that's unfortunate, because, of course, being in a capitalistic society, instead of individuals being motivated by pure intentions, it's, a lot of times it's greed, and it's sad to see.
Yeah. I love that you got your start initially by somebody saying, you should go to this chiropractor. And you were like, that's crazy, I'm not doing that. And then you ended up saying a couple weeks later, like, okay, maybe I'll go try it. And you were like, what game changer? Because it's so similar. Such a similar thing happened to me. I injured my back and my neck when I was a kid. And by the time I was 16, I had my spine not lined up properly for so many years. And like my muscle just kind of grew and formed that way because I was a kid when I got hurt and I never got it fixed. So by the time I was 16, 17, I had pretty consistent like muscle spasms and back pain and all sorts of problems. And it ended up messing up all the nerves to my stomach. So I couldn't eat properly. And I started losing a ton of weight. And I went from 140 pounds to almost 80 pounds in like 3 months, my senior year of high school. And all of my teachers are like, what is wrong with you? You look like you're on, heroin or something. Cause like, I mean, my body just ate all of my muscles. I couldn't even hold up my tray at lunch. And it felt like I was doing crunches all the time because my stomach muscles were just like engaged 24 hours a day.
Your body was spastic. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And the only thing that I could do in order to relax enough to eat food was to smoke pot. And it saved my life. I mean, I would have starved to death a very long time ago were it not for smoking pot. And, I was a teenager. So I was just like, I'm going to do this as a teenager because it's fun. I started doing it because my friends were doing it. It was fun. But as soon as I realized like, oh my God, I actually feel better and I can eat more food and maybe stand up straight for a few minutes at a time and things like that, it was game changer for me. And I ended up going to see a chiropractor for the first time when I was 19, once I went away to college, and they had this wellness fair at my school, and they had a chiropractor come, and he gave everyone who was going there to kind of get assessed, he gives you this clipboard and you fill out all the stuff. He's looking at me, can't see what I'm writing on the clipboard. He goes, let me guess, you got problems eating, you got sinus problems, you get headaches like right here. I'm like, who are you? How are you reading what I wrote on this paper from over here? And he's like, I can just tell by the way you're sitting in your chair, like that I can fix what's hurting you right now. And after that very first adjustment, he took one look at my x-rays. He's like, what happened to you? Like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And he adjusted my back, and I ate more food that day than I had in the last 2 months combined. Like instantaneously. It was like I hadn't taken a deep breath in 3 years. And I didn't realize like how terrible it was until I was like, oh my goodness, that's what breathing is like. I totally forgot. And after that, I was like, my friends in college actually called me chiropractor girl, because anytime anyone had any ailment of any kind, I'm like, you should go see my chiropractor. Dude's the bomb. Like, it was really kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, between smoking pot and going to see the chiropractor, I mean, it saved my life. I have no doubt in my mind that I'm alive today because of it. And, I'm a convert forever. So
stories like yours are not few and far between. One of the things for individuals that don't really understand, what chiropractic is really doing, it's affecting, your nervous system. And when you have these malpositions or areas that aren't moving, that can put pressure on your vital systems, that can prevent things from functioning properly. So we're really utilizing our hands to help free your body so that it can do the wonderful things that it can do. And in the same sense, the main reason why cannabis is so effective is because it helps balance and maintain homeostasis. And when, things are able to function and work the way that they should, it's amazing how life can be. But for you at, 80 pounds, I can only imagine everyone's thinking that maybe you had a cancerous tumor or, all of these other things. And the fact that you as a young high school student had the wherewithal to really understand your body, because I feel like, most of us are living, our lives in sympathetic distress. We don't pay attention to those signals. We don't look at what's happening with us. And your weight loss was evident and how your muscles were really tight. But so many individuals they're not in tune with themselves. And for you at such a young age, to have that foresight and to understand that, yes, the cannabis, is making me feel good, but it's also helping me to eat and helping me to move. That's really great.
Yeah. And, when you're a teenager, especially like between senior year of high school and then going away to college, seeing as like going to go to a restaurant and eat food. I mean, it would take me an entire hour to eat an Oreo cookie, like one teeny tiny bite at a time. And I would chew it and chew it and chew it because, I mean, can you imagine trying to eat food while doing crunches? Mm-hmm. And I was always too hungry because I hadn't had enough to eat in such a long time. That when you don't eat often enough, then you feel sick and you don't want to eat. And it's like this vicious cycle. And I ended up developing terrible anxiety about going out in public where I was expected to eat food around a bunch of other people, because I knew that for people who didn't know me, the waitress, the other people in the restaurant, they're going to see me order food. They're going to see me eat almost none of it, put it in a box and take it home. And I already, at the time, I was a total punk rock kid, and I had like blue hair and giant pants, and like my hair was real short and a wallet chain and all that kind of stuff. And I went to school in the South. So already just me walking into the restaurant, I was like sticking out like a sore thumb. I mean, in today's day and age, way more people have like wild hair and crazy clothes and tattoos and things like that. But this is way back in like 2000. And it was not, you were not seeing tattooed blue-haired girls with short hair who weigh 80 pounds showing up at the Waffle House. Like, you know, I was already drawing attention, and it just made it so much harder for me to go anywhere. And, you know, I would go out to eat with people and they would be like, oh, she's just going to take, you know, I would order a box with my food when I ordered it, because I knew that I was going to take it all home and maybe smoke some pot later and be able to eat more of it in the kitchen of the dorm by myself when no one was looking, you know. And it ended up that smoking pot also helped me with my anxiety too, because I would have these like crazy panic attacks, and it would help me to calm my nervous system down too. And it was so crazy. I ended up going to see my traditional Western medicine doctor when I first started losing all this weight. I was like 17 years old. And I went to the doctor and I said, I want to go see a chiropractor. My back hurts all the time. And I feel like if somebody picked me up by my head and like shook me and straightened it all back out, I would feel better. That's what I want. You know, like that's the thing I could picture. And the woman at the doctor's office said, well, we don't believe in that. We don't believe in chiropractic. And my state,
like we're
yeah,
tooth fairy or something.
Yeah. And like you had to have a referral in order to make an appointment with a chiropractor at this point, because this is all pre-Obamacare when everything was just crazy with health insurance, especially in New York State. And they wouldn't give me the referral, so I couldn't go. And all they told me at the Western medicine doctor was, we think you're on drugs. If you keep losing weight, come back and we'll do more tests. They did no tests when I went in there. And I was like, I've lost 40 pounds in 3 months. And you're not even going to do any tests because you just think that I'm a teenage drug addict. And, you know, if I had listened to them and not continued to self-medicate with marijuana, I would be dead right now. And it's just crazy to think how far, I mean, yes, obviously Western medicine is still like you have to take this prescription medication before you try any, you know, other things. But just the fact that I went to the Neurology Institute here for chronic migraines like a month ago, and right off the bat, they're like, okay, well, in order to recommend you to get the medical marijuana license here in New York, you have to try like pharmaceutical medications first, but they also sent me to go to a chiropractor, which I already go to. And then they sent me to get physical therapy and sent me to do massage. And they kind of added all of these things in together. And they're like, and take this magnesium supplement because that can help with muscle spasms. And it was really nice to like actually go to a doctor that listened to me and agreed that they're, you know, it's funny because it's totally state regulations, because the doctor is like, we know that marijuana helps with migraines. We know that it does, but because of it's just now starting to be legal to have medical marijuana in New York State in the last couple of years. So it's all a new thing. And the state is like, well, you have to have exhausted all the other opportunities before we'll even, you know, let you do this thing. And it's so wild. They put you on all the patients who have the medical marijuana card in New York State have to sign a waiver that at any point I could be drug tested. And if they find any other drugs in my system, I can get in like a huge amount of trouble for it. And if I haven't gone to pick up my prescription marijuana from the dispensary and they test me and I have marijuana in my blood anyway, then I can get in trouble for that. because they'll be like, I know that you're using marijuana that you didn't get from your prescription. So they're like really strict about stuff like that. And I can't like take it out of the state ever, even to another state where it's legal. They're like, no. So I'm interested to see like what will happen in the next 4 years with having a much more liberal federal government, as far as maybe we can finally put all this crap behind us. And it's just it's the whole reason that marijuana is illegal in the first place was like based on like propaganda and lies and the oil industry. I mean, if we're going to get right down to the brass tacks of why hemp and marijuana was made illegal in the first place, it's all capitalism, which is so terrible. It's so terrible. I don't know.
No, I would agree with you, across the board. First, to address, the lack of care that you received back in 2000. Someone losing 40 pounds as a healthcare provider, the first thought in my mind would not have been, oh, they're using drugs. Is there a cancer? Because cancer can cause dramatic, unexplained weight loss. So they weren't even operating within the standards of care. With the state of New York. And it is so interesting, and you can tell like our country's ready to bring it back, but our country was the one that literally stopped cannabis across the globe because of our legislation back in, 1937. And it was primarily the William Randolph Hearst, and because he was into newspapers and had all these tree farms, DuPont with chemicals, and Harry Anslinger, who at the time was the anti-drug czar, and he put out a lot of that negative propaganda. New York, which is interesting, the LaGuardia committee report debunked all of the claims from Reefer Madness, which I know pretty much everyone, if you haven't seen it, it's, watch it. It's insane. But, that was the propaganda that they were putting out at the time, that cannabis was bad. And what I found really interesting is that, the AMA, American Medical Association, and the pharmacists were trying to stop the Marijuana Tax Act because over 50% of our medications at that time in the US contain cannabis.
Yeah, it's so wild. And that because they did that, I mean, there's just so many people who have no idea why hemp and marijuana were made illegal in the first place. And, it's like DuPont came out with synthetic fabrics that were made with oil. And they were like, if we have to compete with making fabric and making ropes out of hemp, we're never going to do it. So it was just so insane that they ended up making it illegal, which caused this terrible downward spiral of us being totally reliant on fossil fuels for so many more things, and creating things out of plastic that we never created out of plastic before. And if we had continued having hemp being legal, we would have used it for paper. We would have used it for fabric. We would have used it for rope. We would have used it for car bodies. I mean, Henry Ford had this whole plan of a car that was almost entirely made of products made from hemp. I mean, he had this like...
He actually did make that car. So
it ran on hemp fuel, and it had the outside exterior part of the car was made out of this polymer from that was synthesized from hemp that was more lightweight, stronger than steel. And when the car was done being used, you could shred it up and put it in the landfill and it would totally biodegrade. I mean, can you imagine where the state of our planet and global warming and all of that, like where we would be had we not made this egregious mistake for the sake of profits of white men? And that not only did they make it illegal, but then they were like, oh, and also we're also gonna like add in here like victimizing Black people on top of this with putting out Reefer Madness, which just like put out all this propaganda about Black people. And I'm like,
Mexican Americans, any minorities were added in that, in that group, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, it's terrible. Oh my
It is
God.
terrible. I am with you. I am an advocate definitely for cannabis, and I believe that it is the answer to global warming, because if you can make over 5,000 non-toxic products, the hemp fiber is so durable that, everyone's military, everyone's Navy utilized hemp in not just the ropes, the cells. They used it in some of the caulking, any way that they could. And it's been used as medicine across the globe for how many centuries? So it is unfortunate that the greed has stopped it, but I am very optimistic, especially with our current vice president being from, the sunshine state of California, and being in an environment where she has seen the advancements in medical and recreational. And when you compare, just looking at hemp versus alcohol or marijuana versus alcohol, there's no comparison in the detriment to society that one does versus the other. There's
exactly. You know what's crazy? In New York State, I had to sign this thing yesterday when I got my medical marijuana card, that if you have a registered medical marijuana license in New York State, you cannot apply for a pistol permit.
Wow.
I'm like, when have you ever seen anyone high on marijuana get a gun or use it? Like, ever? No one would ever do that. I mean, it's just like, but you could totally buy alcohol, drink alcohol all day long and get a pistol permit and shoot lots of people, and that's fine. Like, it makes no sense.
And I'm in Texas, so I am pro gun rights, but I was raised in Texas, so that's all we know here is like you protect your household and you use them responsibly. But I do believe, it should be easier to utilize a plant. Like, what is really, the issue with this plant when it can do so much? And the research is there, and it's continuing, to prove it. I believe right now, if you look at clinicaltrials.gov, there's over 2,000 cannabis trials that are either going on right now or about to launch. So that says a lot, but we can't add stricter enforcement laws on guns because everyone doesn't need a gun. Everyone shouldn't have a gun. And if you choose not to have one, that's fine. But why is it so easy to get one? And when you get one, I can tell you for sure, with my LTC, license to carry, they did not ask me any questions about if you have, this happened, or if you drink and carry your gun. I mean, there's so much, what do you call it? I'm thinking about all the paperwork and the fine stuff.
Give me 1 second. I think it's these people calling me back.
Oh, no.
Later. So obviously we know that like hemp, because of the negative connotations that have been brought down upon hemp and marijuana due to the unjustified illegal aspect of it from the 30s, it has kind of brought all these negative connotations. And I was wondering, as a business owner, I know you've had to jump through a lot of hurdles and stuff like that in order to be a cannabis distributor. And I was wondering if you could just tell everyone a little bit more about like the steps that you've had to go through in order to make this your business.
Well, I'm in Texas again, and unfortunately, we only have certain conditions that cannabis is allowed for, and it is very stringent. So one of the biggest opportunities are for, children in epilepsy. There are 3 dispensaries here that are producing medical grade cannabis, but CBD being legal in all 50 states, thanks to the farm bill from our former president.
I know, like the only good thing that he did in 4 years was sign that bill. He had nothing to do with it, but he's just like, okay, I'll sign that, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that goes back to, we look at the politicians and, the dispersities that we see in just the cannabis industry as a whole, it's disheartening because so many of the legislators that put people away and created these laws are now profiting off of an industry where people are still incarcerated because of what they did. And I'm hoping that, our current leadership can help change that. But for me, I think some of the big challenges that I had early on was trying to find the right information. Everything that I do, because I just have always loved science, is evidence-based. I want to see where, these are applied. And, when I broke things down, the main, of course, with my background, chronic pain, of course, and the way that cannabis plays on inflammation, looking at anxiety, looking at cognitive function, and also performance recovery. But I want to say, like, some of the biggest challenges I had was just trying to find information, trying to find verifiable resources and opportunities to partner with, co-manufacturers that, have the correct entities, they're certified facilities. They, can provide you with certificate of analysis, and that can custom make, our formulations for us and be someone that, you can really trust. So, to have a partner like that is very important. And that was a little bit difficult with the process. It was also a little bit difficult trying to figure out, okay, is there, certain, licenses? Do I need to pursue extra certifications, for the products, and the insurance. So getting product insurance. And that's something else. It's, if someone's buying, I don't want to say the name of the convenience store CBD, you want to, you want to make sure what you're taking is safe and what precautions, are in place, because it is the Wild West of cannabis right now is how I describe it. There's no standards, that are being upheld across the board. And so, there's certain certifications that you would want to have that the upper echelon of the products that are available on the market will have. And those can be, rather expensive to carry. But, knowing what information, because the FDA, of course, says hemp's basically a supplement, which they're not allowing certain health claims, but how can you, when there's research out there that support these, and yet you're recalling all these pharmaceuticals all the time, or these devices that, you don't even test on humans, but yet everyone's saying, oh, well, there's no true clinical trials that have been randomly controlled, on this or that. But how are you able to do that, especially when, your hands have been tied behind your back? So it's relying on other countries, the research that's been done there. The United States is finally getting back to that, but it has been an expensive journey to, learn, what to do, what not to do. And sometimes, learning, taking the hard knocks with it. You won't make those mistakes again. And starting off early on, because, it was such a new environment, there were a lot of consulting groups that, claim to have all of this support and all this knowledge and all these connections. And basically all they wanted you to do was spend a retainer and, ask you for thousands and thousands of dollars. And that was one of the hard lessons learned, where I thought I was partnering with someone that was going to help me not only get, our products developed and in the market, because I'm a healthcare practitioner. I usually have sold certain topical formulations that I didn't make myself, but knowing that I wanted to have my own product line that I could stand behind and that other practitioners and individuals could use that was going to be verifiable. It was quite a journey to find the resources that I needed in order to make that happen. And, I can say I know from seed, all the way through the process, I can track that. And, to make sure that there's no toxins, in our products and that the labs that we're using, because again, this is the crazy, they call it, the green rush, because, plants green, but it's a crazy time where not everyone is who and what they claim to be. And so I would caution, anyone, who's out thinking about, getting in the market, whether you want to own a dispensary or have a product line or anything in between, just make sure you do your due diligence on individuals and make sure that, they're actually who they say they are and can back that up.
Yeah, for sure. Man, we could talk all day, but we don't have all day. So it's 5-question time. So the first question is, tell me about an experience that shaped who you are today.
Well, I would have to say the biggest experience that shaped who I am today is probably being in that car accident when I was a student at UT. So the car was totaled. I was in a lot of pain. I didn't understand what was really going on. It was my first experience with that. And, going through the traditional medicine route, they gave me the muscle relaxers and pain relievers. And, as I shared earlier, my low tolerance had me, just sleeping, through class or in too much pain to go to class. And one of the young ladies who lived in the dorm, her father was a chiropractor. And she came one day and she said, "Hey, I heard about your accident. How are you doing?" And, I was honest. I was like, "Not good, blah, blah." And she's like, "I think my dad can help you." And I was like, "Okay, well, who's your dad? Is he Superman? Like, how is your dad going to help me?"
Yeah.
And, that's when she said, "No, he's a chiropractor." And I shared, what I had heard. "Oh, yeah. I heard about that, that, it didn't work." Or, I never said, "Oh, those guys are fake," or, it's like, I don't believe in that. I just said, "Yeah, no." And she was like, "Okay." So then she goes to turn and walk away. And I had that epiphany that no one else is trying to help me with anything. What could it hurt? For me, to check it out. So we went back to her dorm room, we called him, and he is who changed my life to where I wanted to help others. And I went through the massage therapy program, being really naive, thinking that it would pay my way. I wouldn't have to get student loans and it's going to pay my way through college. No, that's not what happened, but it gave me a deeper level of understanding of the body and, the mechanics of it, and how when things are able to move and function the way that they are, that's when you have health. And when things start locking up, whether it's physical trauma, mental trauma, or even, the toxics from our environmental traumas and how that can manifest in the body and, how your body tries to compensate for it. And so I think it just made me a better practitioner and an advocate for natural things that, can help people, as a real solution. And so I would have to say that experience definitely changed my life, because I thought I was going to be a cardiologist at that point, still helping people and changing lives, but, not dealing with, musculoskeletal disorders. So yeah, it's definitely shaped that.
I love that. I love that you have your, you got on the trajectory you're on now when you were in college, and so did I. But there's so few people out there that figured out what they wanted to do when they were in college. And I love when I actually meet somebody else who's like, "Oh, I had this epiphany and that's who I want to do, or who I want to be and what I want to do." When you're young like that, I love it. Okay, number 2, when you feel defeated or overcome, what do you tell yourself to keep going?
You know what? One of the things that all my friends, and we have this joke. So I call myself the queen of the bounce back. And it's because, you go through these challenges, and it is a part of life. And oftentimes, they're, for us, we perceive them as being the most difficult, and how are we going to overcome it? And, I'm just like, okay, well, I allow myself to process it. And then I start thinking about what options can I take to, pivot. And I just feel like I've had so many different journeys that, in between, I could be in the midst of a pivot and then still have to do that again. But I feel like just grounding myself, number one, making sure I'm breathing. Sometimes I'll just go out and run. Recently started running, which now I have a love for it. But I'm like, okay, let me go out and do, 3 miles real quick and get my head together. And, I feel like it gives you more of a resilience when you don't just sit and bask in the situation itself. And you start looking at, the solution. So I do take, a few minutes to just process it and, feel whatever I feel, but then, start coming up with the solution. So I'm always like, we're going to hit speed bumps throughout our lives, but it's your decision as an individual on whether or not you're going to allow those speed bumps to keep making you roll backwards, or if you're going to get enough gumption to be like, okay, speed bump, I know you're right there, and we're just going to go and knock over you and get to the next one that's headed our way.
Awesome. Okay. Number 3, tell me about a way that you overcame a failure or a mistake and what you learned from it.
Let's see. That's a good one. I would say early on, when I opened my first office, I was so excited. I wanted this certain piece of equipment that was really innovative. And I sent a deposit to a company that was overseas. And I ended up finding out a couple of days later that that company didn't even own the equipment that I'd paid a deposit for. So I think the lesson, and it was quite expensive. I think the lesson that I learned in that is, again, to vet individuals, to make sure that, I was new in business and so green and so excited about what, I'd seen with the research with this equipment, that I didn't stop to see, maybe, they were a scammer. So I think for me, the biggest lesson was, before you jump, make sure you do your research.
Definitely. Okay, number 4, what one trait or habit is most responsible for keeping you on track?
I would say my charisma is most responsible for keeping me on track, because again, as your first question about, so was it the second? I'm confused now, but the failure, it's, I think, as entrepreneurs, it takes a hard, tough, resilient person, because you work so much harder for yourself than you do anyone. And to make sure that you have that charisma and resilience is necessary. But, no matter what, if you can continue to keep a smile on your face through the trials as well as the celebrations, that's just going to elude in everything that you do. And so I would have to say charisma.
Awesome. It's funny how different people answer that question so differently. Some people are like, oh, I have a great planner. And some people are like, oh, I go to the gym every day. And you're like, no, this is my personality.
It is.
I love it. It's like so open-ended. It could just be like, I just love how everybody answers these in different ways. It's great. Your video is frozen now. Ready? All right. So question number 5, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? And what advice would you give to other people?
I would say the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten was not to be an absentee owner. And I had a boss back when I was in college, and she said, no matter what, you have to always be present, even though your team may be strong. They need to be able to see you and know that they can have the confidence in you because, you love your business, but you also love them. And so, when you have the type of culture that invokes empowerment, you can only succeed. So I think that's one of the pieces of advice. And what I would tell someone else would be, whatever it is that is in your heart that you really feel that you want to do, make it your mission to do that, because so many people have careers that they feel like they have to. Mm-hmm. And you turn your hobby like you have, and like I have, turn those hobbies into your career so that you can fulfill your life, because we only get one chance, to do this. So why not do it the way that you really envision yourself? So step out there. If you've been thinking about starting a business or going back to school or, doing something differently and you're not feeling fulfilled, mm-hmm. Take the time out and find out what it is that you really enjoy doing and make that into what it is that you do.
I love that. I always tell people that all the time. I'm like, what's that thing that you think about at night? When you're trying to fall asleep and you're like, man, someday I want to do blah, blah, blah. Like, that's your thing. That's your jam. Mm-hmm. And it's keeping you up at night. Like, go for it. All right. Well, we could talk all day, but we can't talk all day. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. K. Can you tell everyone where they can find you online?
Yes. My website is PainStopperInc.com. We're also on Instagram and what is the other one? Facebook and Twitter. It's at the PainStopper. And please do reach out if you have any questions. I would love to connect with you. And thank you so much for allowing me to participate. And I also wanted to show one of my paper crafts. Miracle. Can I grab this real quick and just show you guys? Because this is so cool. So this is a paper hemp plant that actually has crystals at the top, and Paper Craft Miracles made this for our company, and we get so many compliments, but it also allows me a way to educate individuals about the plant because it's so lifelike. So you and your skill and your art and what you and your company does, I love it. It's sustainable, and it definitely helps us make the world a better place. Thank you so much again for having me on your show. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else you do.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And for everyone who's listening, if you love the show, if you could go on iTunes and review us there. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends, tell your family, just share it with anybody. And just say, hey, I've been listening to this show and it's pretty cool. It makes me feel whatever. We would love to have more listeners, obviously. And if you really want to be awesome like Dr. K, you can be one of our backers on Patreon to help support the show financially and make sure it continues to keep happening, because I, for the most part, do this out of the kindness of my heart. And because I really just love connecting with people and sharing my amazing network of friends and colleagues and acquaintances and just these amazing people that I know from all over the world, I can't not share them with all of you. So if you would like to be a patron, you can go to patreon.com/reachthestars, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
A single interaction has the power to change your life forever. This is a place for the stories of those moments. Stories of pursuing dreams, overcoming tragedy and failure, of coming back to life after so much of what feels like dying, of continuing on with only a vision as a map. This is the place where those moments live on. Come sit by the fire, look up at the stars, and be forever changed too.
Thank you for being with us on the Reach the Stars podcast. Our theme music is generously provided by Byrocratic. You can find him on bandcamp.com. Thank you to all of our current patrons, guests, and everyone else who helps make this dream a reality. We are so proud to be building this amazing community with all of you. If you love this podcast, please consider sharing with a friend, leaving a review on iTunes, and becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/reachthestars. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see the videos of these conversations. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, do something cool and tell us about it.